Hello, everyone, and welcome back to TechRise. I am Desiree Vargas Wrigley, the Executive Director of TechRise. For those of you unfamiliar with TechRise, we are formed in partnership with Verizon to help support Black and Latinx founders all the way from idea stage to exit. So each week we have 3 to 5 founders take the stage and they pitch their businesses to 3 judges who ask a few questions. And then at the end of the hour, the judges choose real-time someone to take home somewhere between $20,000 and $50,000. Today's $25,000 prize is sponsored in part by Duality, which is the nation's first program focused on accelerating quantum startups, which is so exciting that it's here in Chicago. And we'll learn a lot more about quantum because not everyone, I think, knows it. Maybe you remember Quantum Leap if you're as old as I am. But for the rest of us, we're going to learn what it actually means in practice here. And so we're excited first to welcome one of our judges. We have Karen Kerr, Managing Director of Exposition Ventures. Prior to her role, Karen was Executive Managing Director at GE Ventures, where she led a team focused on making investments and developing partnerships in the advanced manufacturing ecosystem. Karen has 2 decades of experience in developing technology-based businesses and venture investing. Karen, thanks for being here. Next, we have Fermin Fernandez. He is the founding project manager and managing director of the Chicago Connectory, and he leads the Bosch IoT digital innovation team in the USA. Fermin has worked at Bosch for 20 plus years in various locations around the world, leading projects in diverse business areas, including tech, innovation, hardware, software, and real estate. So welcome, Fermin.
Thank you.
And then our final judge today is Donna Sun. Donna is Senior Associate at OCA Ventures, a Chicago-based venture capital firm that invests in innovative core tech, fintech, and health tech companies across the nation. At OCA, Donna focuses on investments in healthcare technology and services and was a member of the deal team for eBlue Solutions, OsoVR, BioRosa, and iPill. So it's great to have you, Donna. Thanks. All right. And so without further ado, I'm thrilled to bring on our 5 founders today. But before I do that, I want to quickly remind everyone that you can still apply for both this year and next year for TechRise at techrise.co/apply. We bring in applicants all year long, and we have a very special finale that we're planning for December 1st that will be $100,000 going to one of the founders that has pitched this year on TechRise. So with that, I will now welcome MediTrak and Irawale Akande. Oh, did I say the wrong company? City Health Tech. I'm so sorry. Yes. I got it in my wrong order. I'm so sorry. I'm so glad that you paused and let me reintroduce you. So it is great to have you on for City Health Tech. And we can see your slides and we're ready when you are.
Okay. Thank you so much. And I am ready to go. Humanity is entering a pandemic era. There are nearly 1.7 million viruses in nature, and only 0.2 of those have actually been studied by scientists. This has a devastating impact on our communities. Preventable diseases cause 17 million deaths, and they cost over $1 trillion every year. And when it's not managed properly, like COVID, it can cost as much as $16 trillion. This is why we believe that the future of health tech is in disease prevention. By preventing diseases, we can spend money, we can save money that then can be put into other healthcare challenges. We came up with a formula for preventing infectious diseases, and it goes as follows. Number 1, gaining knowledge. You need to understand your health, you need to understand your community in order to prevent diseases. Number 2, you need to use science, you need to believe in the technology in order to supplement that knowledge. And finally, collecting data on these diseases and how you can prevent them within your community. And that is really how you create a safe environment. What's our device? Opal is an IoT platform. It uses education, behavioral design, and data in order to encourage and sustain healthy handwriting behaviors. So why hand washing? When we started CHT 4 years ago, we learned that hand washing is the #1 way to prevent the spread of diseases. However, 95% of people do not wash their hands properly. This is extremely important because 80% of diseases are spread through touch, and the correct amount of time to wash your hands is for at least 20 seconds using the correct technique and soap and water. So how does our product work? You need to remember the formula. The first thing is gaining knowledge. We create specific and curated content for our customers in order to educate people on how to wash their hands properly. Then we use our unique device that sits right beside your faucet. It detects once you put your hand in the sink, and we play that particular content to engage you and encourage you to make sure you wash your hands properly. And we collect data on how long you spent in front of the device and why. We can tell, okay, the time dropped. If it dropped, how can we change the content to get you to wash your hands properly? And finally, we create the safer community we always talk about. What does our market look like? We're estimating our market to be about $85 billion based on the number of sinks. We're selling our device for $200 per unit and $120 per unit every year in subscription. So who are our target markets? Currently, we're targeting three main areas: corporate buildings, schools, and food manufacturing facilities, right? So in Chicago, we're working with Portal Innovations. We're working with the Academy of Global Citizenship on the west side of Chicago and the subway in Niles, Illinois. So why do these people want to work with us? Number one, we serve as a symbol of community safety. A company is taking steps to keep their staff safe. We can help schools reduce absenteeism, and we can reduce the spread of foodborne illnesses. We're not the only ones working on it, but what makes us unique? Two things. Number one, we can actually help you improve your hand washing technique and the duration you wash your hand for. But more than that, we can actually curate content to each user, to each company, to each customer that comes to us. We can make content specifically for them and transmit that wirelessly using cellular or Wi-Fi. So who is our team? We are experienced, we're hungry, and we are ready to change the world. I actually met my co-founder, Ibrahim, Alinur, at the Bosch Connectory in Chicago. He graduated with his degree in industrial engineering from Northwestern. He's a Gates Millennium Scholar, and he worked for the City Tech Collaborative, where he focused on the Chicago Health Atlas. Myself, I graduated from Illinois Tech. I'm also an IoT electronics engineer, and I work for the largest semiconductor distribution company in the world. And I've worked on a range of devices. And most recently, I worked with Microsoft as a product manager. We've won over $25,000 in competitions across Chicago. And finally, we were admitted to the #1 global accelerator in the United States. We've already gotten an investment of $150,000, which we've used to build our product to get it to where we are right now. And that's why with the money we get from this, we are the last leg in order to begin our manufacturing our devices and fulfill our current pre-orders. So we're going to be supported by Hatch in Chicago, and we are telling you, current health trends must change.
I got to bring the judges on, but say it once they come on. Judges, please come on for some questions.
Okay, so the current health trends must change. We want to prevent the pandemic era, and you can join us as we build the future of disease prevention around the world.
Great presentation, Wole. I think more people have been thinking about how they wash their hands today now than ever. And I think folks are figuring out songs that they can sing while they're. So your focus is clearly B2B. Food handling makes sense. What about healthcare as well? Have you thought about that segment?
Oh, absolutely. So the interesting thing about hand hygiene is that it's actually not something new. So within healthcare, there are actually a lot of people, even within Chicago. I bet you've heard about, companies like SwipeSense. They actually all started within, hand hygiene within healthcare. But the biggest challenges with designing into healthcare is just the standards for designing for that is very high. And then you actually need to democratize the access across the board in order to really solve the problem. Because if every doctor washes their hands properly, but then the people that are coming in or their wives, their kids aren't washing their hands properly, it doesn't actually change how it impacts our communities. So there are a lot of people doing it within the healthcare space, but we're focusing on everywhere else because we want to democratize that access to proper hand washing.
Quick question from my side, more from the technical side, Wole. Is the device sensing how well I'm washing my hands, or it's just checking my time and how much time I spend in front of the sink? How do you ensure that the person is actually washing their hands properly?
Okay. So what we are really doing that's unique, and from the test we've run, is that a lot of people know to wash their hands, but they really need that nudge, right? So we actually show the instructions of how to wash your hand, but we make sure we keep it anonymous because of where you have our devices located. Right. So we don't want to have cameras. And the reason why we're not using something like computer vision to see how people are using that properly is because that's very expensive, and then we will not be able to democratize that access to our devices. So we're actually just detecting how far away you are, whether you take your hands out, whether you bring it back, or whether you stay in front of the faucet. That's the main things that we're tracking.
Okay, thank you.
Congrats on some of the great traction that you've had so far. I have a two-pronged question, which is within the target markets of corporates, K through 12, and food handling manufacturing, how are you prioritizing the different opportunities? And secondly, are there any early outcomes from the pilot's implementations that you could share with us to help us understand the value you're creating for your customers?
Yeah, absolutely. So the interesting thing is that we started 4 years ago, right? When we started 4 years ago, a lot of people didn't want to have the conversation about hand washing because they didn't really understand the gravity of what we were trying to do. So we had started out in schools. We started out in schools around, can we actually educate kids, get them to have new habits as they move forward in their lives? But over the course of the pandemic, that's where we really got into the food manufacturing space, right? So we started out with a company called Boombox Beverages in Evanston, I believe. And what they really needed was to make sure like the staff wash their hands properly, right? So that was actually one of the first people that we worked with to get our devices in because all schools were closed. So that's actually how we got into our first, customer and partner. And then we're working with like a Subway franchise, and they love it because for them, they believe this is a way to hold people accountable. So when we had a conversation with someone from McDonald's, they said, we know people aren't washing their hands properly because the amount of soap that is being ordered hasn't increased.
I gotta cut us off. I'm so sorry, but Wally, you did a wonderful job.
Thank you.
Now I'm truly inviting MediTrak on with Humphrey Kanyoke. Great to have you. And I'll go video off while you get your presentation ready.
Yep. So can everyone see?
Yes.
Okay, so can I begin now?
Yes, please go.
Okay, so I'd like to start by walking you through a few numbers about a healthcare condition. Now, this condition affects 17% of everyone on Earth, and almost half of whom do not know they have it, and more than half of whom are not being treated for it. Here in the US, almost half of all adults have it, and it costs the economy over $130 billion annually. So what is this mysterious condition I'm talking about? It's hypertension. So though the WHO recommends that 24-hour ambulatory monitoring be used to diagnose hypertension, majority of diagnosis still happens in physicians' offices, where a lot of false diagnosis happens. So 24-hour ambulatory monitoring is when your blood pressure is sampled, say every hour, usually at home. And there's also a very high rate of non-adherence to blood pressure medications and lifestyle change recommendations from physicians, mainly because physicians don't have the data to link your day-to-day activities to your blood pressure. I would know all this firsthand because my dad was part of this 17%. So he had hypertension his entire life, could never really figure out what specifically to work on to be able to keep a healthy BP long term. And he passed away, unfortunately, a couple of years ago from cardiac complications brought on by his hypertension. So I started MediTrak Life, where we are building a wearable watch paired with our mHealth app, specifically designed for long-term hypertension management. So we went to Purdue University, licensed a patent from them, added our own innovation, and are building a watch to be able to collect blood pressure, pulse, respiration, oxygen saturation, temperature, and ECG readings. The key thing to remember about our watch is that we are able to collect blood pressure at your wrist without needing to cut off blood supply to your entire wrist. Why this is important is that it allows us to be able to do 24-hour ambulatory monitoring, allowing clinicians to be able to reduce the rate of false diagnosis, to be able to detect nocturnal BP, which is your blood pressure, which either rises or fails to fall when you sleep, be able to manage dosage of hypertension medications, and predict cardiovascular risk. So this is not our watch, but it's one of an earlier iteration of our device that we built, an upper arm version of it, using the same technology. So I'm showing this as proof of our technology at work. So the watch collects your data about your day-to-day activities. So your sleep, your diet, the amount of coffee you drink, all of that. And then it maps that data against the data collected by the watch, which allows the clinician to then be able to know the direct link between the specific things you do and your blood pressure. And then they can better predict cardiovascular risk and design treatment programs specifically designed for you that you can maintain in the long term. So the watch is scheduled to be completed by the end of this year. And we have 2 clinical studies lined up to collect clinical data. A pilot study with Parkview Research, Parkview Hospital, and an IDE study with a group of Purdue researchers. So reimbursement is available to pay for our solution. And this combined with the number of people who have hypertension creates a $21 billion market. As I've already said, the key difference between our device and the hormone heart guide, which is the biggest competition out there, is that we don't need to cut off blood supply to your entire wrist to be able to detect blood pressure. The team has almost 100 years experience combined, with Jake leading the product development and Dr. Babs providing clinical input. And we are backed by a full-time board and it's 2 teams of clinical research partners. So we intend to use the funds to both finish product development and complete the 2 clinical studies that I mentioned earlier. So I'll just end here by saying that.
Judges on, please.
Yeah, so while the judges are coming, I'll just mention that in this time that I've been speaking, about 4 people have passed away from hypertension. So that's how serious the condition is. And we have the team and the technology in place to solve it.
Thank you, Humphrey. A quick question, Humphrey, about the watch itself. Do you have movable parts on the watch that allow you to do the blood pressure measurement, or is all digital?
Yes, so this is getting into a little bit of our proprietary area that we are still seeking IP protection. But yeah, so essentially what I can say about it is that we acquire blood pressure at the radial artery directly. So the key thing about blood pressure detection is that there are 2 current methods at the wrist level. So there are those devices which are using pulse readings to estimate your blood pressure.
I see.
And then there are the others which are using a wrist-based cuff, like the hormone heart guide. But then to be able to do a wrist cuff, you cut off blood supply to the entire wrist.
Okay.
And this is inconvenient and creates extra pressure at the upper end of the wrist, which
understand.
causes, So what we do is we go directly for the radial pressure.
Okay. And you say it monitors 24 hours a day, so it measures multiple times all the time.
Yeah, so so as you understand, it's probably not necessary to collect blood pressure, say, every 5 minutes. Unless say you're on the hospital, you're on your deathbed in the hospital or something. But so the frequency is going to depend on what the clinician prescribes. So if the clinician wants data every 30 minutes or every hour, it's capable of doing so. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for your presentation. Could you talk a little bit about the integration with the clinical workflow, in particular, what happens when anomalies are detected, what kinds of alerts are given out, and how does the patient get triaged appropriately?
Yes. So the way we design the solution is that the app data is automatically paired with the watch data. And then we use our own algorithms to be able to draw insights from the correlation between those 2 sets of data. So to give you an example, right now, for instance, with my dad, every time he would go to his physician, he would tell him, go back and work on your diet or get better sleep, which is pretty generic, right? But what we are hoping to move towards is that the physician will be able to tell you, go back and reduce your coffee intake by 2 cups a week. And you can reduce your blood pressure by this much. Or get 2 extra hours of sleep and you can reduce your blood pressure by this much. So the insights that we are able to draw from the correlated data allows us to provide those insights to the clinician, who can then prescribe the exact treatment needed for the patient. So we are the solution.
Wait, sorry, I'm going to let Karen get a question in before we run out of time.
Okay.
Maybe you can just tell us a little bit about the clinical trial and sort of what the scope and endpoints are.
So the IDE is an investigational device exemption study, which is basically allowing us to gather clinical feasibility data for our solution. So basically, the FDA allows you to gather feasibility clinical data to be able to assess how robust the data you are gathering is. So that is being handled by a group of Purdue researchers. There's another study that is going to be done at Parkview Hospital, which allows them to assess the quality of our data. So once the patient takes the device home, how does that impact the quality of data that is being collected? So that's what that study is.
How large is the study? How many patients do you need?
So for the first study, we are looking at between 20 and 30 patients. And for the second study, we are looking at a maximum of 50 patients.
Okay, I got to cut us off, but wonderful job, Humphrey. Thank you so much. And judges, we'll see you in a couple of minutes after Jessica presents. So Jessica Bussert from Wave Therapeutics is up next.
Hello, I'm Jessica Bussert.
Wait, just sorry, you don't have your slides up. So I'm going to stop you.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
No problem.
Let's try that again.
You're good to go.
Hello, I'm Jessica Bussert. I'm a lifelong technologist, an emergency room nurse, and the founder of Wave Therapeutics. Our suite of smart cushioning devices prevents bed sores, saves lives, and substantially reduces a major healthcare burden for patients and facilities alike. I created Wave Therapeutics after taking care of a disabled vet who came into my unit septic from the worst bed sores I'd ever seen. His family was poor and his doctor had prescribed a $4,000 automated wheelchair cushion that they just couldn't afford. His story touched me and it motivated me to use my technical and healthcare skills to create a more effective solution that would be affordable to anyone who needed it. Each year, 60,000 Americans die from bed sores, and they impact the lives of 3 million more. These injuries cost the US economy almost $11 billion annually, and regulators say that facility-acquired bed sores are caused by staff neglect. Care facilities need to pay for treatment at an average cost of $44,000 per incident. And these wounds are also the second leading reason facilities get sued for medical malpractice. Our technology combines multiple clinically proven therapies to eliminate pressure hotspots while promoting return blood flow to at-risk tissues. Next, our custom IoT and analytics platform provides real-time data, compliance information, and remote patient monitoring, making Wave the most affordable and effective bed sore prevention technology available. Competitive products fall into two broad categories. First are simple static pads made of foam, gel, or air. These passive devices aren't much different than the chair cushion you're sitting on right now. At the higher end are expensive automated cushions that act like a teeter-totter under the user, simply moving stagnant blood from side to side. Wave's cushion is more effective than any of these, and our affordable price allows healthcare facilities to achieve a quick ROI and literally save billions in liability and treatment costs. Before healthcare, my first career was in global information technology, where I led European business consulting efforts for one of the largest tech companies in the world. Together with my partner, Dr. Ricardo Vasquez, we built the team needed to achieve business success. Ricardo's in surgery today, and he sends his regards. We've created 8 generations of prototypes informed by over 250 stakeholder interviews. We've built out our manufacturing processes, signed a major contract with the Veterans Health Administration, and shipped our first devices to their researchers and reviewers. Our initial wheelchair market of 38 million comes from the VHA's patient population. Next, we'll expand all US long-term care facilities for a market size of 500 million. Our domestic TAM of 2.5 billion comes from all wheelchair users in the US. When you consider an aging population, our eventual expansion into Europe, and our numerous licensing plays, this represents a huge business opportunity, and Wave intends to dominate in this space. Wave is currently raising a $2 million seed round that will allow us to accelerate our MVP route to market and invest in the R&D needed for our follow-on products. By initially focusing on the VHA, Wave expects to profitably sell 10,000 units within our first year. Thank you for your interest.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm sorry, but it's time for the judges to come on, and I thought you had more, so sorry about that. Judges ready?
Excellent, Jessica. Great presentation. I wanted to ask you about the sensor. You said there are sensors in the Wave technology. So you can monitor the movement that the patient is doing on the wave cushion, or how does it work?
Excellent question. So we're using in our Rev 1, our MVP, we're using pressure sensors that detect the pneumatic pressure of each of our multiple cells in the body of the cushion. So we can proactively adjust those, change pressure matrix, change cycle times. Now in our Rev 2, we're going to incorporate temperature and moisture as well as pressure.
Okay.
Now this will give us much more rich data that will eventually feed into a machine learning platform.
Okay, and the algorithm to decide whether to inflate one cell or the other is processing inside in the device, or you're sending the data to some other place?
So right now, clinicians can write prescriptions, send it to the device, and the prescription, the device will operate based upon that prescription.
Ah, okay.
So the provider can say how much pressure, what cycle times, yada, yada, yada.
Okay.
Now, any alerts will provide push notifications to clinicians so they can proactively change that prescription in real time.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Great job, Jessica, and needed product. I noticed that your device is an order of magnitude less expensive than other active devices. How are you able to achieve that?
So thank you, Karen. That was a part of our mission from the get-go. Coming from a background in engineering and technology, I knew that many of these products were overpriced, and I could engineer something that was substantially less expensive and still do a better job. So we're going to market at an SRP of $450, and with production quantities, we'll achieve a COGS of $150 per part.
Do you expect that these high-priced guys can just drop down to your level, or is there something different that you're doing?
We're doing quite a bit different. We've got 28 claims that we filed so far in the US, Canada, the UK, and the European Union. And so I just invite them to come over and try to step on my IP, because I'll enjoy that battle.
Anna, go ahead.
Could you elaborate a little bit more on your supply chain strategy? In particular, I'd be curious to learn about the manufacturing and distribution partners.
Yeah, I'm super excited about that story, because our entire product is being manufactured right here in the United States. Actually, all our manufacturing partners are in Indiana, where we can keep on top of quality control and make sure that we're providing the best products available. When we expand to Europe, our intention is to create subsidiaries and actually manufacture in Europe as well, because we get a lot of government benefits from that local sourcing.
Great. Wonderful job, Jessica. Thanks so much. And now we are going to welcome Marc Ward from Socian.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone.
I'll let you know when we can see your slides.
Sure.
Looks like you're good to go.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Marc Ward. I am the founder and CEO of Socian Technologies. We create safer societies using AI-enhanced UAV technologies. And here's why. Because racial disparities in policing are rampant. Unless you've been living under a rock for the past 2 years, you know the names, you know the faces, and you know the stories. And those stories have galvanized demands for police reform nationwide. Now, conversely, law enforcement will argue that field intelligence is extremely difficult to collect, and they're not wrong. Law enforcement officers are asked to make life-altering decisions with very limited information, and sometimes those decisions have tragic costs. Officers in the field, they need data that can allow them to make life-saving choices and remove the fog of fear in interactions with our communities, which is why I created the EDGE AI system. EDGE stands for Enhanced Data Gathering and Essential AI, which is simply the most advanced UAV and AI solution ever. We connect our AI to your city's 911 system, and it's able to autonomously respond to and provide a bird's eye view of public safety encounters while providing real-time 3D imaging and topography data. This is AI designed to protect and save lives. Our AI can detect and identify weapons like knives and guns and can advise an officer on the scene using natural language processing that the suspect is holding a cell phone instead of a handgun, which allows officers to make better and more informed decisions in real time. Now that UAV that you're looking at, it's engineered to go out all the time. It's specifically engineered to travel further and faster, using as little energy as possible. That way you can rest assured that our system can be there to observe any encounter from start to finish. With a top speed of 150 miles an hour, you can be assured we're there. And by using 7 onboard cameras and sophisticated LiDAR, we're able to really observe a scene all the way around. Now, our market size is pretty generous. Autonomous machines by 2024, a little bit over $57 billion. This one is interesting. The public safety and security market in 2020, the height of the pandemic, $365 billion. That's right. We spent over $1 billion a day when we were supposed to be inside. Now, the global public safety market, we anticipate that moving over $50 billion. Now, our core strategy, our core market strategy is broken up into 2 parts. Governmental, right? That's your intelligence, reconnaissance, and surveillance. That potential customer, over 18,000 police departments. Beyond international, federal, state, and local governments, the most interesting is FEMA. Using our technology, we can respond to a natural weather disaster, send our unit out and find survivors. And not just that, respond to rescuers using that same natural language processing, tell them where they are, and also the safest way to get there. The second strategy is the commercial market. They're going to use it for communications and real-time monitoring and security, like universities and sports venue operators, but more importantly, a media outlet. Want to report on something that's a little too dangerous to send a person? Send us, we can get the video and send it back to you. Now, our business model is rather simple. We're going to sell the individual UAV hardware, and the software is separate at $75,000 a year annually. Our fundraising milestones, $1.5 million pre-seed. We already have 4 pilot programs set up in suburban communities around Chicago. And if we do everything right, by closing 15 customers, we should have $1 million in recurring revenue. Why are we building this? Because believing is seeing. Thank you so very much for your time.
Great job, Marc.
Thank you.
Thanks, Marc. Fantastic job.
Thank you.
Are these proprietary UAVs? Are you building those yourself, or are you working with a partner and adding a sensor package for your applications?
No, ma'am, these are custom. They are absolutely built by me. I knew that wasn't an off-the-shelf solution because of the energy sources needed, the power bands. I knew we had to create something that could be there from start to finish. So I built and engineered our own.
Quick question about the connectivity of the device to the
Sure.
network, or to send pictures to a police officer on the ground and things like that. I mean, there
Yes.
are areas, for example, even in Chicago, where Wi-Fi is also, it's very bad, connectivity very slow. So which technology are you using to make sure the images are crisp and, they're transmitted right on time to the person needing the images?
We're staying connected autonomously using 5G networks,
Okay.
which are very, very reliable. We didn't want to go radio because there is no human operator. So
Okay.
by staying on a 5G network, we're able to keep communications running pretty smoothly.
Okay, but there are areas that don't have 5G.
That is
connectivity.
very true. And our major areas, especially our 4 pilot programs, they have high 5G connectivity. We would have to find solutions for places that didn't have 5G connectivity.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Marc, thank you for the great presentation here. I'm curious if you could talk a little bit about some of the other competitors that are using either AI or computer vision. For instance, one that I can think of that's from the Chicago area is called Actuate.ai. They're basically tapping into security cameras and adding their computer vision technologies to also detect any kinds of weapons, potential threats, right? And alert people proactively of potential security threats that are present. So would be curious to hear how you're thinking about positioning yourself and what are the potential competitors to your company?
Sure. Our potential competitors are, if you want to go to the billion-dollar companies, you're looking at the Lockheed Martin, Shield AI, all those people. But here's the differentiation. They're all mainly DoD contract competitors. They're looking at the big money. I'm looking at, and they're looking at military applications. I'm looking at civilian applications. Also, the one company that you mentioned in Chicago, they're a great company. I love them, admire what they're doing. Our differentiation is the autonomous nature of what we're doing. Those are call and response systems, meaning that Ms. Kerr would have to log into a system and find out the information that she needs. Our system sends it to her because we know she needs it in real time. So she's getting it in real time instead of having to search for it. This makes coming up with safety solutions faster and more data driven. But I love the company that you mentioned. I'm a fan.
We have time for one quick one. If anyone has another question. Okay, well, excellent job, Marc. And next we are going to invite JustAir on and Darren Riley.
Awesome, thank you. And great job, Marc. It's awesome. All right.
All right, we can see your slides, so we're ready when you are.
Awesome, sweet. Hello, everybody. My name is Darren Riley, and I'm the co-founder of JustAir. And before I get started, I want to say that my father always told me that I'm a product of my environment, an environment that we all share. Sorry. Environment that we all share. And in fact, each and every one of us breathes 20,000 breaths on average in our environments. Now, unfortunately, for many communities that are often underserved but over-indexed for air pollution, those 20,000 breaths actually could be working against their lives. And this is not this particular tool or unique to Chicago. In fact, researchers have found that air pollution costs the US annually $600 billion. But the real problem is that many cities today lack the proper air quality monitoring infrastructure to make those decisions to move us to a more equitable breathing environment for all, which is why we made JustAir. JustAir is a neighborhood level air quality monitoring solution. We provide deployment services, management services, which entails the maintenance, the repairs, the calibration of the sensors to ensure data integrity, but also insights, going beyond the dashboard and curating data products for our partners and for the community so they can not only protect themselves, but protect their breathing environment. And we're doing just that. With our pilot in Grand Rapids, the second largest city in Michigan, a city that had only one air quality monitor now has 11. And what we thought to be true, we now in fact know to be true, which brings me to the story of 3 miles. The story of 3 miles is this. The sensor above and the data that you see is in front of a public school in the Black and brown community. The sensor below and the data you see is in a green space located downtown. These sensors are only 3 miles apart from each other. Yet over the same time period, there are great disparities of the air quality data, which is shown here. Now, what is so important about those disparities? Behind those disparities, behind this data is a human being. Someone like my father who grew up in Queens, New York in the projects, in small grid in the 80s, who grew up with symptoms of asthma, but unfortunately did not understand that he had asthma until he was diagnosed when he was incarcerated when he was 27. And upon his release in the prison system, unfortunately couldn't hold down a job, not because of his unwillingness to work, not because he didn't want to provide for his family, but because he was restricted to manual labor that required a healthy lung. And that story is not unique to my father. That's our family member, that's our community, that's our neighbor, but most of all, that's our fellow human being. So that is why JustAir is intentional about going beyond the dashboard, forming partnerships that we're currently today talking about with health systems to keep people out of the emergency room around pulmonary disease, to inform traffic and transportation information with the city, inform land use and zoning laws, but most of all, making sure that we're being intentional about the community, giving them the data around engagement and awareness of their breathing environment so that they can protect themselves and protect their families. I'm excited about the journey so far, starting in this year with our launch in Grand Rapids, as I mentioned, with our acceptance into the M-Hub Accelerator in the Chicago community. Really love that team. And also with our ABC documentary that's aired to be featured at the end of this month. But I'm most excited about is the future. We plan to expand in Grand Rapids our pilot. We plan to secure an insights partnership. We're in conversation with health systems around public equity, health equity. But most of all, I'm excited about our Chicago launch. With the information that we got from Grand Rapids, we're now ready to take it to the big city. And with this $25,000, we'll use those funds to produce our new technology, our new sensor technology at M-Hub in the heart of Chicago, and then deploy in the west side and south side of Chicago, where that transparency of air quality is greatly needed. So from operations to sales to tech, we have the team to do just that, achieve those KPIs, those milestones. And I just want to close with I didn't grow up with any symptoms around asthma. I played basketball at Carnegie Mellon for 4 years. But 3 years ago, because I lived in Southwest Detroit, one of the most polluted communities, I did develop asthma. So I'll make it my life's mission that I know that I'm a product of my own environment and ensure that no matter what environment you grow up in or you're born in, you have equal access to clean air. Thank you so much.
Great job, Darren. Now the judges can come on.
Sweet.
Donna, you want to start this?
Hi, Darren. Thank you so much for your presentation here. I'm wondering, in addition to cities, are you thinking about targeting, let's say, employers or certain corporates, kind of in a, let's say, smaller ecosystem as well, because there might be a higher willingness to pay there, and that is an incentive to increase the kind of the benefits and the overall EHA's health and safety of employees.
You are 100% correct. We've been we've been focused on more of the cities and also with nonprofit dollars, and we have some traction there in that market. But currently we're looking at CSRs, right? Especially oil and gas. I actually was approached by a partner in Accenture who came to me and was saying that a lot of their clients in the oil and gas industry solution are looking to do right by CSR, but they don't want to put their own sensors out there. They actually want a third party to verify because there's some distrust in the community and some of the work they're doing. So you're absolutely correct. Corporates is a faster way to market, and we're looking at that right now.
And just as a quick follow-up to that, in those sales conversations, what's kind of the tipping point that really gets the employers, for instance, right, really excited? Like what are they actually looking for KPIs, outcomes-wise, to say, hey, that's the value that we want to see?
Absolutely. It does come from a place, to be quick, frank, from a financial incentive. I mean, the ESG pressure that's coming out with some of the regulatory climate that's being evolved, they're trying to get ahead of the curve. And the other side of it is building this relationship and trust with the community. I think with Black Lives Matter and COVID happening, a lot of people are being more aware and distrust in corporations. So they're trying to be more proactive with that. But amazing question. Thank you.
Thank you.
So Darren, this is great, and I agree with you. I mean, just deciding, how to live and the quality of your air by a sensor that is miles away from where you live doesn't make any sense, obviously. And I would like to ask you about the business in terms of the indoor quality of air, where you live, where you sleep, where you spend most of your time. And obviously with COVID concerns about indoor spaces, are you exploring that as well? Maybe into indoor?
Great question. I think there are a lot of players in our market, direct to consumer with indoor air quality, which is awesome. Is that I actually see that we could be an interesting opportunity to partner with certain companies. The reason why I say that is if you look at a marketing strategy or geolocating where your sensor should be placed, if you see that there's great disparities in air pollution and around an area in a neighborhood, you can use our data to inform those consumers that may be more willing to buy the sensor. So we're looking at that in the insurance market as well. Use our geolocation informed buying decisions. Mm-hmm. Good question. Thank you.
Can you talk a little bit more about the pricing model and maybe which cities that you may be thinking about rolling out to beyond Chicago, and are you willing to go at risk in terms of your sensor deployment?
Absolutely. So let's talk about the rollout. Currently with our paid pilot, that was $30,000 with 5 sensors in downtown. And we also got some other dollars to sponsor the other 10 that were further below downtown. So we want to maintain that model. There's a lot of margin in that management and deployment services. Now, this is not touching the pricing of Insights. So the Insights partnership and that pricing model is being in conversations right now. We're really in customer discovery phase with that. And answer your question about next other cities. I think Chicago is, the heart of the Midwest and being the capital. So we really want to be keen on that, but also I'm in conversation in Detroit, which may move a little bit faster with the EJ groups here. And also I want to mention that we have strong relationships with the EPA representation in Michigan and Illinois. So we can use our partnerships with some of the infrastructure dollars that are coming around from the EPA to support some of those initiatives. So thank you so much for asking the question.
Great job, Darren. Okay, so I don't envy the judges ever, but this week seems particularly hard because everyone did such an amazing job. Just a reminder for people who are just joining us, this is a Deep Tech and IoT themed week, but it is sponsored by Duality, which is focused on quantum founders. So I'm excited to welcome a couple of really incredible guests to do the deliberation. For the first time, I will not be asking the questions because I don't know as much here, and my great friend Cole does. So really quickly, I'm going to introduce both of our speakers. So we have At Duality, we have Preeti Chalsani. Preeti helps set the accelerator's strategic vision while providing the technology context to the accelerator, including through relationships with industry and other stakeholders. She also serves as the Director of Industry Partnerships for the Chicago Quantum Exchange in a joint position with the Polsky Center, where she seeks to build connections between industry and CQE members, research institutions, with the goal of advancing development of quantum science and technology. So pretty great to have you. And interviewing her is going to be Cole Johnson, our VP at P33 of Deep Tech, where he supports early science commercialization programs related to ecosystem development initiatives to help Chicagoland capitalize on the extensive technologies being developed in our region's research labs. Most of his efforts focus on leveraging his experience in early stage innovation and technology commercialization. And with that, I'm so excited to hand over the microphone today because I think we all want to know, what is quantum? If you could start there, kind of define it in the most layman's terms possible, that would be great.
Great. Thanks so much, Desiree. And thanks so much for inviting me here. And those were such great pitches. Wow. So yeah, quantum, very quickly, it refers to these very peculiar laws of nature that come into play at really small scales, like atomic scales. So like 1,000 times smaller than a virus, or 1,000,000 times smaller than than human hair. So these are properties, kind of like wave particle duality. I had to start with that because, this is a session sponsored by Duality. Entanglement, superposition, these are all terms you're going to hear. But these are some very weird effects that you don't see in like the bigger world, but you start to see them in these atomic scales. And as it turns out, you can do useful things with these quantum mechanical effects. And quantum science is not new. It's produced many of the technologies we're very familiar with, things like lasers, semiconductors, transistors that form the heart of the computers that we all know. In the last couple of decades, engineering has advanced, has given us advanced tools and techniques, so we're able to exploit some of these even more peculiar properties like entanglement and superposition to do interesting things like quantum computing and quantum communication and quantum sensing. So we've figured out new ways of creating information, new ways of storing information and manipulating information, and new ways of transmitting information. That's, when you hear the word quantum thrown around these days, it's generally that.
Yeah, it's that one, I think to add to that one analogy that I really like is around that entanglement piece that is really important to quantum. And you can think about it, the analogy is a coin toss, like classical computational bits are 0 or 1. That's how your normal laptop that you're viewing this on now works. If you flip it in the air, it's sort of simultaneously 0 and 1 as it's spinning in the air. That's kind of the state that a quantum bit is in. It's at any point in time, 0 and 1 at some particular distribution. And it's that fundamental sort of, I'm talking about superposition, not entanglement, my apologies. That state of superposition is basically some of the secret sauce around quantum mechanics that enable you to do things that Preeti hinted in computing and sensing and communication.
That's really helpful and exciting and gives me some context beyond Ant-Man. So I appreciate it. I'm going to hand it over now to you two, and I'll come back on soon.
So Preeti, you quickly, you sort of hit on a little that there's sort of this, we've been researching quantum for a very long time, but there's been a lot of interest right now. Can you sort of hit home a little on why the audience should care about quantum technologies right now and what's driving that interest?
Sure. So there's a new surge of quantum technologies, and you'll hear about it being referred to as a second quantum revolution. But basically, in the last couple of decades, engineering has advanced far enough that we're able to create new technologies, new devices that are about to give us commercial applications that will have wide-ranging applications. So for example, quantum computers will be able to solve certain types of problems exponentially faster than any classical computer we have. And you could use that to design new catalysts, for example, that will help with to mitigate like the climate change problem, or to design new materials. Quantum communication helps you transmit information, more securely in ways that it can't be hacked or quantum sensing allows you to see things much more sensitively than you were able to before. And the implications of this are really like, some of it has national security implications. Quantum computers can solve problems that could lead to huge financial gains. For example, in like designing stock portfolios, it could give you a huge advantage. So there's an intense amount of interest from everyone, from like financial institutions, governments, healthcare organizations. Everyone's really interested to see what this new technology will bring. And there's been sort of like a global race. Everyone's investing money and resources into this. And so we've gotten a lot more results, a lot faster, and it's kind of had this positive feedback loop.
Yeah, I've heard people refer to this as sort of this generation space race is really around under like what nation will develop quantum computing first, or generalized quantum computing. So I guess with that background of sort of understanding what the quantum industry is, can you sort of describe what Duality is and why it was created?
Sure. So Duality is our very recently launched accelerator program. It's the first in the nation that's focused solely on early stage quantum startups building quantum technologies, quantum and enabling technologies. And it's based right here in Chicago and Illinois. It's a 12-month program that draws startups from across the world, not just from our region. We give them funding, training, and resources, and we provide them an ecosystem in which they can advance both their business and their technologies. And it's a collaborative initiative that's brought together many of the region's players. We are really huge in quantum science. We're one of the world's leading hubs in this area, and we're leveraging this advantage we have to support startups and help grow our ecosystem even further.
Yep, and as a founding partner to that being P33, like that was what excited us about this, is a chance to take the resources that already exist in the Illinois ecosystem, the Chicago ecosystem, and marshal them towards something that fundamentally as an industry is very nascent. There isn't really a quantum industry per se yet. There's a lot of private investment and federal dollars across the world trying to build this industry now. And given the foundations we have in basic and applied research, it just made sense to do this right now in Chicagoland.
And I guess our first cohort has 6 startups, but going forward, we'll have 10 to 12, and they span hardware, software, a range of technologies from quantum computing, algorithms and applications to quantum materials. It's really exciting. So
I'm going to change topics a little just because it's a topic. One of the main reasons I wanted to have this discussion today is to talk about what is this. We're talking about sort of some of the momentum behind TechRise and look at Duality in that perspective and the quantum space. What's diversity and inclusion look like right now in, say, quantum information science as a field? And then as maybe we can bleed into that just to make sure we're not going over on time, is how are we thinking about Duality of addressing these issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion?
Yeah, that's a really great question and obviously a really important one. So quantum science isn't, to be blunt, like diversity is not that great. It draws from fields like physics and computer science, which are not very diverse. But this is a new field. There's a real sense in which everyone involved in this field thinks we have an opportunity here to make it better. We're building it brick by brick, and we can do it differently than it's been done before. And we can make sure that we're addressing these issues related to diversity, because it's really making it a much more productive field by bringing in more diverse ideas and diverse people. Coming to Duality, like that's certainly one of our, founding tenets. We want to foster diversity, equity, and inclusion. We have an ambitious goal of having 50% of our startups founded by female and BIPOC founders. We're doing all kinds of things to make sure that we're supporting fostering diversity in addition to having startups that are diverse themselves. So our programming includes sessions that relate to DEI and how companies can increase diversity in their ranks. We discuss these explicitly during our team meetings. All of our partners, mentors, vendors that we work with, we're making sure that as far as possible, they look as diverse as our region is. And many of them share the same values we have, so they have their own diversity initiatives. Even our startups are really involved in this effort. Many of them are, kind of engaged in the community. They've been going out to high schools, and we plan to do more of this and speaking to future generations and educators of future generations to make sure that they know what quantum science looks like and what quantum entrepreneurship looks like. And one, it shouldn't be foreign to them, and two, it looks not just white and male, but there's a lot of diversity in this field.
Totally hear you there. I think there's the opportunity is the nascency of this industry while it pulls from other sectors, because we have the opportunity, at least within our region, to design the structure that will be the framework of that industry. It's an opportunity to basically try to get it right from the get-go versus trying to remediate like you kind of see in the computer science and computer engineering space right now. I think the other thing that as we think about, there's sort of the things like opportunities like TechRise, what they do is sort of shine a light on diverse founders that will pull and let people see what they could do. You always have to expand beyond that. And because this is largely still driven by basic and applied research, there's the distribution of that. So there's like, who's doing this now? Who can we highlight to sort of spread the word and get more opportunities spread more evenly? But also you think upstream is how do we get more of the workforce prepared to work in this industry because it's coming. And then you fundamentally moving back, if you can't just pull more through, you also have to increase the width of that, the bandwidth of that pipeline. And then you're just going back to, underlying systemic issues and basically STEM education. And so I just want to say all that, say we have a lot of, we're aware of what we're trying to do, I think, but we're not overlooking that we're fighting pretty hard issues in this space as well.
Thank you both so much for being on. And it is such an important point that you made, Cole, that if we can get this right from the very beginning, imagine what this industry is going to look like in 10 years, 20 years, and what our society is going to look like at that time. It'll be poised to be fully representative. So thank you all for being so proactive in the way that you're designing this and for representing Chicago on such an important future technology or future category of technology. And it looks like the judges are ready to tell us who has won. So founders, I'm going to invite you all back to the stage so that we can celebrate the winner. Who's going to announce?
I will.
Okay, great.
Alrighty. First of all, thank you all so much for doing what you're doing, building businesses. We know it is not easy at all, and a lot of respect, and really excited about everything that you're doing. And great to see, of course, the diversity in the founders and the teams here as well. The judges, we had quite a bit of a debate internally in trying to figure out, which is the one that's the winner, because it really was a tough choice this time around. And ultimately, a couple key factors, not only was it the strength of this particular team, but we thought that the company that we ultimately chose was really addressing a very serious problem in the market, and they understood that pain point intimately well, in addition to having been very thoughtful about developing a truly differentiated technology, right? That's also protectable there as well. And finally, we really like the thoughtful go-to-market strategy and some of the early proof points. So without further ado, the company that we have collectively chosen as the winner is, it is Wave Therapeutics. Jessica, congratulations.
Congratulations.
Wow, thank you so much. I am so excited. Oh my gosh. I do a lot of these kind of events, and every time I pitch with other companies and I see these incredible technologies they're bringing to market, I think there's no way I could win this. I mean, and wow, just I'm so honored. And to all the other companies, oh my gosh, you kicked it. You really kicked it. And I look forward to seeing you win and succeed and become that next unicorn as well. But for this time, I'm going to celebrate my own win, and I appreciate it. Thank you so much, judges.
Yeah, wonderful job, Jessica, and wonderful job, everyone else. It really, we were all messaging behind the scenes as you guys were pitching. You did a phenomenal job, and I know that every single one of you will be back on the TechRise stage soon. And to our judges, this was also a really powerful list of questions today. You clearly knew the industry and were really thoughtful in the questions you asked the founder. So thank you all for making the time. Hopefully this is an inspiring way to go into your weekend. I know I feel inspired about the future of our city and of IoT and connected devices and products. And then of course, Duality, thank you again for sponsoring and for sharing the work you're doing within the Quantum Accelerator. So have a great weekend, everyone, and we will see you next week.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Have a
you
good weekend.
all.
Bye.
See you.